Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Retail Matters webinar. We'll get started in a short moment as we give some time for people to join the event. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Retail Matters webinar. I am Stephanie Lear, Events Manager here at Retail Council of Canada. RCC's Retail Matters webinar series is designed to provide the retail community with accessible and quality thought leadership on a variety of topics affecting the retail industry. Each month, we feature a different topic pertinent to retailers. Today's webinar is sponsored by Fortinet. But before we start our session today, I would like to take a moment to remind you of our upcoming webinar for the Retail Conditions Report, the holiday edition on December 13th. This is strictly an RCC members only event. You'll find the link in your post-event email to register. If the organization you work for is a member, you are also a member. A couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. If you're having any trouble with your sound, please try rejoining the event or use the phone number in your event reminder. And a recording of the webinar will also be provided in a post-event email. At the end of today's presentation, our speakers will take audience questions, so please share them in the chat. So let's introduce our speakers today. Active retail loss prevention plays a key role in maintaining retailers' profit margins, protecting consumer relations, and minimizing risk, no matter the stability of the retail marketplace or the type of products you sell. Our speakers today will share solutions and architectures that can help you develop a strategy to keep your retail experience safer. So please welcome our speakers, Eric Jensen, Business Development Engineer at Fortinet Canada, and Raja Sundararajan, Business Development Engineer at Fortinet Canada. Welcome, Eric and Raja.
Thank you. Hello.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining today. So we want to cover off managing risk of loss, both in physical space as well as in the digital store. So to address that first, a little bit of preamble around this. I think we all remember Blockbuster Video. It does not exist anymore, but it was a near and dear place in my heart when I was young. And what we're seeing as from that example is it's important, even if we are physical retailers, to incorporate digital experience into the interactions with the customer. That's really what is keeping retail alive today, in my view, is the frictionless experiences that digital transactions can facilitate. And there's ways to do that with physical space, ways to do that in the digital space, certainly. But what we will see, hopefully share today, is the data that enables a lot of the business analytics that you're already doing will also power a lot of the loss prevention and risk reduction measures that we're proposing. Raja, what are your thoughts on this space? You've got a bit more experience in retail than I do.
Yeah, I think you kind of highlighted those things very clearly. The biggest trend that we see, and it's been going on. It's nothing new. There is this omni-channel experience or the customer experience, whether I shop online or I shop in store. They want to see the same experience. And one of the things that retailers have been doing for a long time, they're looking at many innovative ways to see, okay, how can I bring in technology, not just from a technology perspective, even the attitude, even the perspective from a customer point of view to say, how can I leverage technology? How can I work very closely with the IT teams to ensure that I provide the best frictionless experience for customers?
And what are some of those differentiators that helps a retailer be more frictionless, as we say?
Yeah, so there are many things. So some of the things that I wanted to highlight here, and we wanted to highlight here is customers do look for a consistent experience, whether I'm shopping online. So, for example, if I'm researching something online, or if I'm in store, and there are different kinds of buyers. You have the impulse buyers and buyers who do a lot of research before they actually make the decision to purchase a product. So how can I provide that experience for both all types of consumers? And one of the things that we see from a retail experience is how the more I am connected with the customer, the more I'm able to engage with the customer. That's where the curated personal experiences come in. That's certainly going to turn into a loyal customer base, right? So those are some of the things that we see in the industry as well.
And this is sticking around, of course, for the brick and mortar shops as well. Yeah. So what are some things that we are seeing appearing in these brick and mortar shops that are starting to adopt that digital experience?
Yeah, so it depends on the type of retail that we're talking about. So if you look at a big brick and mortar shop, we are starting to see ghost kitchens. We're starting to see concessionaires within the same large retailer. So the store is not dead, and there are things that customers, even though e-commerce has taken off since the COVID pandemic, the retail stores still around, and there are things that we want to touch and feel and look at the product before we actually make a purchase. There are many different products, and depending on the type of customer as well, they want to see the product, they want to sit on a couch before I buy a couch, or lie down on a mattress before I buy a mattress. Even though there are companies that sell only online, like Casper and so on, but there are still, we have sleep countries in Canada, they continue to exist. So the more engagement that I have with the customer, when I say more engagement with the customer is, so for example, if a customer walks into my store, I want to provide an experience or an environment where the customer can go online and do a competitive shopping, read the reviews as they're looking at the product. So by me enabling those technologies, I'm not only providing the customer a much better experience before they buy it, but also it gives me an opportunity to gather the data from a competitive point of view, from a trend point of view. What are the things the customers are looking for before they make that decision to purchase? Or what are the stores, what are the online stores, or what are the online websites they go to review and compare my product? That gives me a good understanding from a competitive point of view as to how I can compete against these online retailers as well. Yeah.
So that's a good foundation for this. What are some of the risks or loss scenarios that we're encountering?
Yeah, so this is a research that came from National Retail Federation, and it's interesting to see that one of the biggest threat, what they identified is the violence against the guests. We see so many videos and TikToks about how the customers interact and engage in violence in some cases. So from a retail loss prevention perspective, how can I minimize the risk and protect the people? So certainly it kind of highlighted that this research highlighted where how can I protect my employees? How can I protect my associates who are on the floor or in front of the customer? So those are some of the things that we will discuss it, how we can mitigate that, how can I improve the customer experience, how can I provide effective training to my employees and my associates. So those are some of the things that we'll touch on. And certainly the other biggest trend is the mob violence or mob. We've seen many YouTube videos or the TikTok videos where we see a swarm of people that walk into a store and they go for the high value items and they run away. These are kind of the organized crimes, retail crimes that is happening as well. So there is a lot of physical theft that we have to worry about, but at the same time, we also have to think about the online presence that we want to have from a retail perspective, and what are the cyber attacks that we are up against from an online presence at the same time. From a physical front, what are the technologies that we should be looking at? What are the best practices that we should be looking at? From not just from a inventory shrinkage perspective, but also from a customer experience perspective, our employees' engagement perspective. Those are the things that we will touch on.
Yeah, it kind of looks like loss can come in a lot of ways. Like guess on associate violence, that was pretty surprising to me to see this in the report that would be such a high raising thing, but that could lead to undue employee turnover that reduces customer service experiences if the stores are understaffed. It makes it easier for shoplifting to occur in the future if stores are understaffed. So I think what this report is showing is there's a lot of ways that loss can happen in an organization that is beyond just inventory loss. But if we do just zoom in on inventory loss a bit, you mentioned some of those top causes are like the organized kind of retail crime. So this current trend of doing TikToks of just running into a store and smashing stuff. That's wild that that's a thing. Fraud and internal theft, like definitely there's a lot of credit card or loyalty program fraud that we have to deal with. Natural disasters make sense, and administrative errors come down to human in the loop. How can we use digital or digitization of the store to reduce these risks or address these causes of loss? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so there are so many different technologies that we can bring into play, and the point that I want to highlight here is the fraud and internal theft. This is something retailers have faced for a long time. So this is where the more interaction, the more that we engage with the employees, the happier the employee, the lesser the internal theft. How can we put some policies in place, the technologies in place to reduce the internal theft as well? So we'll touch on that. Just before we go there, if you go to the next slide, I want to touch on kind of the types of retail losses. So the biggest one that we all face, it's nothing new. Shoplifting is one of the biggest things that retailers face. The next one is, this has always been there, the return fraud. So that is another area of retail loss. So these are all the brick and mortar type of things. Of course, we're not even talking about the online presence. And the next big one is the employee theft. So how can we, what are the type of, what do you call the loss prevention strategies that we can apply is, if you go to the next slide, we'll touch on that, is kind of coming up with the prevention strategies in terms of create a security policy, let's say. And we want to have a policy that for employees, the employees where the policies talk about locking the stores at night and not allowing certain items within your store or outside your store, guidelines for handling difficult situations like shoplifting or fights. These these are some of the trainings and security policies that we want to address for the employees. And from a customer point of view, we want to have certain guidelines to say, how can we provide directions for our customers to report if there is a threat that they witnessed? How can they reach out without confrontation? Rules against stealing items, kind of displaying information, or having posters out there, or displays out there, stating the anti-theft kind of a thing. And the other one, the second one, of course, from an online perspective, we certainly want to not have any default passwords. And most of the online attacks or the cyber attacks have been through kind of someone forgot to change the default password on a camera or a IoT device or a HVAC system or whatever it is in my environment. So that is very important. And of course, we want to segregate the traffic if it is a large store and we have different devices on my network. Gone are the days of flat networks. We want to start segregating our infrastructure to ensure that we have clearly defined demarcation for all these different items of the IoT device or my point of sale systems on my network as well. And the next thing is the CCTV. We want CCTV prices have come down to a point where we should be looking at implementing the CCTV across our entire store and try to avoid any blind spot, and so that we are constantly monitoring. And the old saying, if I can't see it, I can't protect it. If I don't know what is on my network, I can't protect it. So leverage the CCTV as one of the things. And there are so many AI-enabled CCTVs that are available where it can do pattern recognition and it can alert before certain things happen, so that can be brought to the loss prevention team of the associates of the store managers that are in charge of that particular store. The next one is the point of sale system. We want to make sure that we have multi-factor authentication or some level of controls from a point of sale system perspective. And also we want to have point of sale system that is tied back to our inventory management system, so that if there is any discrepancy from a point of sale system and inventory tracking and management system, that is another area where we can immediately identify if there is a loss or a theft that is happening in the environment. The other one is the loss prevention education. So this is something many retailers are already doing that, and certainly we want to continue to improve that as theft modes are changing. Like we talked about, this mob of people coming in and robbing the store or taking the high value items. So how can we adapt our training and constantly educate our staff and employees to identify the pattern recognition of the type of activities that is happening in my store? And the last two pieces are leveraging the technology. How can I leverage the technology, whether it is an RFID tags or whether it is Bluetooth tags, to track my inventory, whether it is in my warehouse, whether it is in my store on the floor. How can I track these items? So this is not only from a theft point of view. We also want to look at misplacing items within the store itself. So if it is a item that has to be in the refrigerated section of the store, there are times people will leave that. They will grab it, put it on their cart, and then they will decide, okay, I don't want it, and they will just leave it wherever they want to leave it, and they just continue their way. So if that item just sits there, which is supposed to be refrigerated, and it is going to go bad, and the shelf life for that particular product is going to reduced significantly. So how can we track items? And that's where technologies come into play as well, where we can do geofencing or auto alerting. Those are some of the experiences that we want to have as well.
And if we have that capability to track position of items in a store with that geofencing, or just, I guess, automated inventory management through that ability to just scan a tag remotely with the RFID, that must play a pretty good role in providing a lot of good metrics around where product needs to be staged in terms of warehouses, or even down to like facilitating the return process and making sure someone didn't just come into the store with a receipt, grab the same item off the rack and try and return that. What are some other tips or things that you can take us through?
Yeah, so some of the tips is retail is very unique compared to any other vertical where employees handle cash and credit card information. So for us to maintain that level of integrity and customer confidence, pre-screening new hires is very, very important. And also so simple putting up signs throughout the store or in the parking lots comes in really, really effective. If I don't have these signs, then I'm not deterring certain behavior if someone wants to do something. By clearly displaying anti-theft signs, so they are under constant, there are CCTVs around, that will certainly reduce that. And we have seen that as a trend. And also, when it comes to accounting, leveraging third-party accountants certainly will help. Any discrepancy from when we do the profit and loss analysis, and we can track our inventory and supply chain very effectively. And also use point of sale system itself. There's a lot of information that we can gather out of the point of sale system. Just to tie that back to our inventory system, where we can go through the daily sales, and we can quickly identify if there is a missing item or missing inventory. That comes in handy, and also that can tie it back to why certain cash register are taking in certain type of item. Why is only this particular item going through this particular cash register, not other cash register? Or why only returns are happening in this particular register only when this employee is there. So there are a lot of information that we can gather as well. There's a lot of data that we can mine out of that as well. That's another thing. And of course, we working with a loss prevention specialists that will help you identify these vulnerabilities. Certainly.
So that takes like a lot of infrastructure to set up if we're talking about automating our inventory management with RFID, or having those connected customer experiences in the store where we're enabling them to do product research in the store, or bring their interactions with the app into the store. What's that process there for getting set up for that frictionless experience?
Yeah, so this is a buzzword that's going around nowadays, frictionless experience or omni-channel experience for customers. But the underlying technology that comes in a very general aspect of it. So how can we compete against the e-commerces of the world, or how can we bring that, physical and digital experience? How can we combine it, kind of the digital experiences? As I walk into a store, I want to provide that customer all the channels that they want to access. So providing them with a secure Wi-Fi certainly gives them that confidence. And as I browse through products down the aisle, I should be able to scan a product. And if I want to know more information about that product, I should be able to just scan that to QR. More products are now putting on QR codes or just scanning the barcodes. I can get a lot of information out of that. by having technologies in the background that can enable that engagement with the customer to say, I don't have to go look around, press a button, wait for an associate to understand more about the product, or doing a competitive analysis. Someone shopping for a product, they should be able to go to another website, see where they are comparing the prices. I stated this earlier on. So we want to provide that kind of an engagement. So this is not only helping us reduce the loss from an inventory perspective, we are also minimizing the risk in terms of engaging with the associates and providing them that capability as well. Right? And certainly there are other ways we can bring the technology in. Certainly this is going to give us more and more data that will help us analyze the customer foot traffic, dwell times, and that is certainly going to help us understand how well we are utilizing our space within a store, and certainly that is going to help us improve our profit margins and reduce the risks within a given environment. Okay.
So if we're encouraging the customer to come in, they've already shopped on the app, and they want to go see in the store, we can pass that information on to the associate. Like we can recognize the device through the app, and when they come into the store through Bluetooth beacons or through their connection to our Wi-Fi network. What kind of experiences does that enable in the retail experience?
Yeah, that's certainly going to improve that loyalty aspect from a customer, right? So the customer likes to shop in the store because he's given that feeling that, hey, I'm getting the best deal every time I go and shop in this particular store, because I can immediately look it up and I can compare prices, and I'm doing my research about this product before I buy the product. I don't have to wait in line, or I don't have to wait and look for someone. I can walk in. This is kind of bringing the online type of experience right to the brick and mortar, down to the physical aspect of it. So when I come in, I'm armed with all the information that I want, and I feel that I'm doing a good decision before I purchase that product, right? And also there are other aspects now in terms of enabling ESL technologies, or bringing in analytics and push notifications to the loyal customers to say, Mr. Eric Jensen, you're a loyal customer. Here is a coupon for you. We can push that coupon to their mobile devices. So these are some of the technologies that are out there from a customer engagement perspective, and at the same time from a risk mitigation point of view. So there is a lot of automation that happens in the background, which ties back to your real-time data analytics using ESL, the electronic shelf labels, bringing in IoT sensors or Bluetooth sensors to track movements of inventory, and also track real-time inventory in the store, along with the CCTV camera that provides that, the better shopper experience. That's the point that we want to make here.
So if we're able to, I guess, address the digitization of our inventory management, get some automation in the store through smart tags or RFID or sensors otherwise, what you're saying is we're able to use that data to address the loss scenarios by understanding what is being taken, where we need to maybe adjust our shelving, down to just having useful data for improving customer engagement.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. Of course, there's the cybersecurity side to all that as well. Like loss comes, of course, through the supply chain, warehousing, people taking stuff at the warehouse or at the storefront, or through employee turnover, or any of those other things you've mentioned so far, Raja. But of course, in the cybersecurity space, there's a lot of issues facing retail as well. MGM Grand, a notable recent issue in retail recently, or hospitality rather. Same with Campari back in the day. And Home Depot. I still have grandparents who refuse to shop at Home Depot because of their perceived, they think it's a risky situation that they're going to lose their banking information if they shop there now, even though that's been ages ago. But these impacts in cybersecurity seem to have lasting reputational damages. What have you seen, Raja?
It's the same thing. That goes back to the confidence. If I'm giving my credit card to a store, we have seen all these skimmers everywhere. We see these videos of skimmers as well. So, the minute I lose that confidence, it takes a long time for a customer to come back to the same store, like you said, like a grandparents. That is something that we want to prevent, and that is a huge loss for risk for any retailer. We see a lot of other too, yeah.
I think we're familiar with ransomware and the costs there, but an interesting finding I saw along the way while preparing for this was a few CEOs were saying something along the lines of a recession is easier to manage within the retail experience, or I guess business, than ransomware or other cyber attacks. And what's interesting is retail is within the top 5 of industries that are targeted for ransomware. Another trend in cybercrime is over time, it's gone from more of a spray and pray type of approach to targeting organizations down to choosing targets selectively based on capability to pay large ransoms. So there's a lot more, I guess, whale hunting going on, and that increases risk because if any organization is hit by ransomware, there's obviously like the upfront financial cost. There's the ongoing cost to restore operations if things are shut down. But there's also that reputational risk that is very long lasting. And that can be an ongoing cost that's just irrecoverable in some cases to some extent. I think it's worth calling out a few stats about ransomware in the retail space. There's more organizations in retail reporting ransomware attacks versus 2020. It's gone up. There's an inability to recover from ransomware issues. So as businesses are digitizing and they bring those inventories online or into the digital format in a meaningful way with this automation that you're talking about, like that's a big investment. But if it doesn't come hand in hand with cybersecurity, that's left a lot of organizations in some state where they didn't have sufficient process to recover. So huge impacts there without that investment in security or backups to match. The rate of ransomware payout because of this is increased. If you don't have, like I guess the infrastructure in place to be able to recover from these kinds of cybercrime incidents, the only option to get back to business can often be paying out the ransom. And then within the retail space, there is slightly less rate of ransomware payout against like industry average as a whole. But there's only 28% of retail organizations that were surveyed in this 2022 report that feel confident that they'd be able to stop an attack before it got to the point of the deployment of ransomware. So if we have fairly high rates of ransom payout, a low ability to respond or recover, what that means is retail organizations are becoming less competitive at winning insurance coverages. So because there's only so much cyber insurance policy available, insurers are not just filling every policy they can, they have to be selective. So retail organizations are in competition with each other as well as the industry more broadly, any kind of organization to get that coverage. And without improving the metrics as an industry, there's reduced ability to get this kind of insurance coverage, which can make life a bit harder in terms of addressing cybersecurity.
So that's a very interesting point. And question for you. So when we talk about ransomware, is it only on the online front, or can the ransomware start anywhere in my environment?
Yeah, that's a good
Point.
question. I think when we think about ransomware, we're very focused on kind of like a data center view or a cloud view. But retail is a bit of a unique industry in that a lot of the organization is publicly exposed and physically exposed. If I go into a retail store, I don't know what it's like where you are, but where I'm living, I can go into most stores and see maybe one associate on the floor, if that. I would say most of the time that I go to a store, there is no interaction or even like seeing an associate in any kind of meaningful way. Like it's easy to kind of go in and be unnoticed. I think that's why when you mentioned like CCTV with like detection capabilities and ML recognition, that's very important. But the other side of that is because it's a low interaction, like there's less deterrence for engaging in digital assets in the store. So if I come in with a USB that has malware, I can probably just plug that in somewhere, find somewhere to plug it in. At Walmart, I know there's like scanners here and there that have USB devices just on the floor for customers to like check barcodes. When I go to clothing stores or otherwise, there's usually not any associate near the till until it's time to like guide a customer through that purchase. And you can wait at the till and no one shows up sometimes. So it's very exposed in terms of just being able to walk in and deploy some kind of malware package if there's not appropriate protections on the point of sale terminals or other exposed terminals in the storefront. And from there, a threat actor has the ability to get persistence, at least in the branch, and possibly pivot on from there or just disrupt that one site. So it's not just online threats coming from the internet. It's also when there's proper incentive, there could be physical access threats here as well that are leading into this kind of ransomware scenario or other cybercrime, which is kind of wild.
Yeah, thank you.
And we can't just, turn everything off. It's not a way to do it. If we turn everything off, we're impacting both our e-commerce side as well as the physical side because everything is very much intertwined these days. So we have to be able to deliver these services in a very available, very secure way. Availability, of course, makes sense, but customers want that flexibility as they're engaging with the organization. So having that ability to engage customers through an app, through a website, through the storefront, and provide that convenience in processing payments or processing any kind of transaction or having touch points with the customer, that requires a lot of digital infrastructure usually, as well as third-party services and some complicated supply chains and trust boundaries as we're interacting with this ecosystem in the retail space. So there has to be some kind of security applied to all that. More and more organizations are moving to the cloud, and whether they're managing their cloud deliver services internally or outsourcing to third parties for payment processing or e-commerce websites, there's a lot of ways things can go sideways here because as we add in additional services to the mix, really what we're doing is increasing our exposure to risk. And this is necessary to have an agile business and to provide a great customer experience, but it does need to be addressed in a broad way. So some core pillars of addressing this, I would say, and I think this goes back to the physical space as well, is just the first step is always visibility. If you don't have good data, you're not able to make good decisions. And if you don't have good data at the storefront, maybe you're not able to well serve customers, or maybe you're not able to identify how loss is happening. Same thing in the digital side. If we don't have good audit records, good security log data, good inspection of all the data that we collect, very difficult to identify threats that have bypassed existing technical controls. That's how threat actors are able to get in and get all the way to the point of deploying ransomware. Is there wasn't visibility up front into what was happening in terms of initial access, whose account was abused, or who clicked the phishing email, or where was a USB plugged in. If we don't have that kind of data, we're not able to react early on in this incident lifecycle. And of course, once we recognize something, if we don't have a process in place to address that, then we're unable to adequately respond. And it can be kind of a I don't know, chasing different things and being distracted, trying to address all the risks that there are in delivering e-commerce or just delivering IT services to a company. So there's of course frameworks like PCI DSS that can give a lot of good recommendations and controls for providing risk management in cybersecurity, but it's not entirely holistic. There's always other things to add. So understanding what the best practices are in the industry, like the CIS or the top 10, top 20 type controls, those are useful things to give focus and just a bit of a sanity check up front to make sure that investments are going towards something that's going to meaningfully improve security posture. What would you say are kind of the paths towards getting this baseline idea of what's going on and identifying risk and going from there?
Yeah, I think the earlier slide we had kind of the broad strokes as to what and how, right? And so when we look at from a cyber resilience point of view, so how do I get there? Is always the biggest question we all have. And when we look at the retail vertical, the same thing can be applied for a physical store and also from a cyber resilience point of view, from an online presence and IT point of view. First and foremost thing is we want to identify our critical assets. What are my critical assets? And have a complete inventory. Again, if I don't know if I don't have visibility, then it's very hard to secure it. So once we identify our core assets and then identify the perimeter assets like the point of sale systems and so on and so forth. And those are the things that we are just talking about, IoT devices, HVAC devices, door lock mechanisms, the pin pads. These are all the kind of the perimeter assets that we have within a retail environment. So we need to identify those critical assets. Once we identify them, now we think about the security controls. And how effective are these security controls that we are going to put in place? And that's where this kind of the threat model comes into play, where we say, okay, how secure are the credentials? Do I have the latest and greatest software with all the patches in place? Passwords, when we have authentication, if I can enable multi-factor authentication, I should be using multi-factor authentication. Identify trust relationships from a door lock mechanism, time of day access, all those kind of things. And also, certainly you want to have some level of cyber awareness program for employees so that they can identify phishing emails or clicking on the wrong link. So these are some things that within Fortinet we offer it as a free service from a cyber awareness program. So anyone can access that and use it as an internal cyber awareness program that you can do. And also certainly you wanted to segmentation. It is very important to segment your network, micro-segment your network, and encrypt it to meet the compliance requirements. Right? So this is the path. You can start anywhere. It is not a sequential thing, but the first and foremost thing is we want to identify our critical assets. And so by doing that, we can kind of prevent or minimize these attack vectors, whether it is from a IT perspective or even from a physical point of presence perspective.
What kind of infrastructure is, I guess a few more first before we get to that, a few more things that can help reduce risk while improving our ability to deal with loss at the same time, interestingly, is things like multi-factor authentication and privileged access management. If we're applying that into terminals or devices, accounts, services that are handling that supply chain, whether that is ordering, receiving, or doing the transaction within the store, that reduces risk in terms of people being able to subvert those things. If there's shared accounts in those processes, then there's less attribution to who is making changes, which just increases risk for insider fraud. If there's no authentication on the payment terminal, even in the first place, very easy to just check yourself out potentially, or do the scanning, reduce your cost as a shoplifter doing something weird. And we can get a lot of data from these authentication pieces as well. And when we consume that data, as well as from like our e-commerce sites, from our inventory systems, from our web applications, all that, and provide analytics on that, that's giving us a lot of visibility that normally we would think about for business analytics and how we're targeting certain customers or delivering sales or handling inventory. But we can use that as well on the back end in security analytics to identify signs of fraud or identify ways that employees are insider threats potentially. When we're delivering e-commerce, of course, you want web application firewalls in front of those storefronts, especially if you're not outsourcing your online store experience to a third party like Shopify or something. And we need to just securely develop those customer-facing applications as well. So using tools like dynamic application security testing or static application security testing during the development pipeline can give a lot of capability to identify threats and vulnerabilities in the web storefront that can be reduced upfront or mitigated upfront. That's really important because one of the common ways that e-commerce sites are exploited is there's insecure access or insecure development pipelines. So the web application can be exploited directly as a way to insert malicious payloads that redirect customers to nefarious purposes. So that can be like inserting malware into the website or something else. There's lots of ways that has been abused. MageCart, which came up on an earlier slide, was a good example of that. That can be used for credit card skimming or just brand damaging actions otherwise. And of course, addressing security with policy, whether that's security awareness training or understanding what the trends are in terms of how customers are interacting with retailers or trying to abuse retailers, that can be important too. But Raja, getting all this data, of course, requires some infrastructure. What's kind of a quick underpinning that you can share for how we can define this capability or provide this capability, the framework?
Certainly. Yeah, certainly. So protecting retail environment where there is a lot of moving parts, and certainly for Fortinet, within Fortinet, retail is one of our leading verticals where we have these reference architectures built. So by kind of applying these reference architectures, you can support the stores and kind of enable end-to-end security all the way from the storefront, all the way to whether the cloud platform or the data center platform, all the way starting from SD-WAN, security SD-WAN perspective without compromising security, and also bringing in business continuity perspective. If you all remember last year, I think it was last year when Rogers went down, a lot of businesses had to close the store. So how can I have business continuity at the same time? Those are the 40 extenders that we have as part of this reference architecture, where I can have dual SIM, dual modem, dual SIM, or dual SIM, single modem. So I can have Rogers and Bell, or Videotron and Rogers, whatever we want to have. So that way, in case of a link failure, I can still continue to operate and still follow the secure SD-WAN with SASE built in the background, and also take it all the way down to the endpoint level. So I want to have that visibility, deep visibility down to the edge of the network. And at the end of the day, can I do zero-touch provisioning? I can't expect my store manager or the associates to be IT savvy. So how can I ensure that I have the zero-touch provisioning enabled? So by plugging in, everything just powers on automatically and joins the fabric of your organization securely. And that's exactly what Fortinet can bring to you, all the way from client agents on client, so I can identify whether it is a printer, whether it is a point of sale system with multi-factor authentication, with APs and switches down to the edge of the network and connecting back to the data center. So that's where Fortinet can bring that ecosystem of partners from an analytics perspective, whether you want to work with any one of the analytics providers that are out there, whether it is iLab or Cloudify or SkyFi. All these are different partners that we can work with, or Tag or Hanshaw. From an ESL perspective, we can integrate that as part of the overall architecture reference architecture.
And any closing thoughts to summarize?
Certainly, these are some of the best practices from a risk mitigation perspective. Visibility, right? We want to have visibility down to the edge of the network. Yes, we built a network. We brought the store up 6 months ago. Things change. It's very dynamic. Storefronts are very dynamic. So I need to have constant monitoring, constant visibility as to where is this traffic going. Is my point of sale system traffic going to where it's supposed to go, or where else is it going, right? And also keep a up-to-date view from a threat mitigation perspective. So those are some of the things that we want to keep a track to ensure that we are protected, we are patched, on the devices that are on my network don't have any vulnerabilities that can be exploited as well. And certainly we want to encourage the training aspect of it, skill development aspect of it, from a IT perspective, from a loss prevention perspective, from a guest perspective. So those are things that we want to highlight as well.
Awesome.
Do you have anything else?
I think you covered it, man. It's good to me. Thanks for joining us today. We're happy to take some questions now, if there are any. And otherwise, see you again another time. Fortinet.com. I believe there's a /retail on that if you want to learn more about how we fit into the retail space.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Eric and Raja. Just taking a look here. I don't think any questions have come in from the audience. That's okay. Let's just give them a quick moment. No, I don't see any additional questions coming up.
All good.
Thank you so much for your presentation today. It was very informative. I encourage our audience to participate in our upcoming webinar for retail members, Retail Council of Canada members only. It's a great way to get a pulse on what's going on in the industry on December 13th. And we also have our RCC store. Save the date, May 28th and 29th. That will be a great place to learn more about cybersecurity, AI, and all of the key issues in retail. And of course, we have our Canadian Grand Prix Product Awards open for submission. So watch for your post-event email, copy of our speakers' slides today, and a link to the recording. And if you do have questions, please just reach out to us and we will connect you. Thank you so much for attending today and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.